And why do we see only Muslims? You're saying that they have to act out in violence and anger and acts of terrorism because they are upset at foreign policy. But I do want to turn it over to Pastor Wejdi. He is a former Muslim. He was actually part of the Islamic movement in Khartoum in 1979. Is that true? So I want to turn it over to him, and then maybe he can maybe comment on that, but also give us your opinion on how somebody gets involved to be a terrorist to begin with, not necessarily the reasons for terrorism.
Well, for me, started actually in my childhood. And the first things we heard about Christians, hatab an-nar. What it means that they're the fire of hell, the firewood of hell. So they're the one they're going to burn us when we go to hell, because in Islam they believe in purgatory. They're going to be in hell for a while, and then they will go to heaven, or to Jannah. Not really necessary to be heaven, but so. From our childhood, the hatreds has been rooted in our heart toward the Christian. You're not yet a terrorist, you're not yet a Muslim Brotherhood or involved in any organization. Just the idea that they put in your heart or in your mind toward the Christian, these people, they're going to burn you. They're the fire of hell.
Christians and Jews, or just Christians?
The Christian and Jewish. But because we don't have Jews in Sudan, they turn it to the Christian.
Yeah.
This is number one. This is the people, they change the book. This is the one they make Christ God. So as Brother Kamal and Brother Walid, they talked about quoting from the Quran, but for me or for us in Sudan, is the idea they put in our mind toward the Christians. So from our childhood, we saw this hatred toward the Christian. And the result of that, this is when we got started of fighting the Christian, persecuting them, do anything we can do. And I did it in the school, actually, and I got expelled out of the school until I went to university. And in university, when we have a freedom of kind of a speech, only inside the university. But the minute you go out, you'll be arrested. Anyway, in the university, this is where I joined the Muslim Brotherhood. And I start to act as a defender of Islam. This is what they told us. We are the defender of Islam, and we're here to stop the people from being Christianized or become Christians. So you're talking about childhood, you're talking about your zeals, and then you're talking about, to be the defender. After that, you start to be recruited for some of the things to do. We have a riot today. Somebody did something against the Muslims or the Muslim Brotherhood. So we go out in the street for a riot, and we start to break cars and burn places and all these things. So this is how we started. And then you will see yourself, you're really getting into it, and they praise you for what you're doing, and you're doing this for Allah.
Sammy, do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with what they're doing. And you made a good point. You said even Westerners don't agree with Western foreign policy, but they don't go out to commit terrorism. Now, let me make something straight. I don't agree with what they do. Just because you disagree with the foreign policy, and even though the foreign policy is bad.
Do you agree or disagree with what Pastor Wejdi was saying about how they get recruited and how they get involved in terrorism at such a young age?
The way they get recruited is because they look at what's going on. It doesn't take much to radicalize them. You have groups out there who just show them this stuff. They say, look at the Western foreign policy, look what's going on, and this is what radicalizes them and causes them to join such extremist groups. Now, it doesn't mean they're right, but that's the reason, and that's what we're trying to ask. What motivates them? And according to the experts, I'm going to be quoting many more who say it's because of Western foreign policy. And furthermore, you might disagree with Western foreign policy, but Western foreign policy doesn't directly affect you as it affects a person living in Iraq who has to suffer from an invasion. So that's a weak comparison. Foreign policy impacts the Muslims who are directly involved. You're just sitting back and watching it. and what's going on the news. And that's even what Congressman Ron Paul said, presidential candidate of the 2008 election. He said, they do this stuff because we're over there. We're over there. Now imagine if they did this, if they brought their armies to our country, how would we feel? And that's what he said on public television, a live debate.
Waleed, I want you to comment.
Well, I mean, he brings Michael Schur regarding foreign policy, Ron Paul, so on and so forth. I mean, political pundits say all kinds of things. I mean, President Bush says we all worship the same God. So if we have to believe everything is said by experts and politicians, then I guess I greet Mr. Za'atari in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, my God and his. Will he agree? I guess not. So that answers all these things about the politicians, talking heads. What foreign policy is he talking about? He wants to direct the issue to us, and which we have to defend foreign policy, so on and so forth. You know, he must confess that Afghanistan was devastated by the Taliban and Iraq was devastated by Saddam Hussein. You know, who liberated these people? It was non-Muslims. It was the United States of America and the Western allies. It is not interesting that even Jewish doctors, you know, helped the Kosovar Muslims. That is, you know, probably hard for him to accept, but it's the reality. You don't have Muslim countries ever aiding non-Muslim countries in history. So, you know, to take some opinions from the West, and these, you know, opinions disagree with each other. There's opinions that even refute those opinions. So you can't just take this issue of foreign policy. America does not want to invade Iraq for no purpose. They're not in Afghanistan for no reason. There are reasons for these. While you can criticize American policy, and there are many things I criticize myself in American policy. I criticize America for aiding the Mujahideen in Afghanistan against the communists. That was a bad idea. So we can criticize foreign policy, but the gist of the whole matter, jihad is something that is ordered from the inception of Islam itself, or else it's impossible to answer all these Islamic conquests. I mean, I've heard Mr. Za'atari before say that in one of his debates that the reason Muslims invaded Christian countries is because the Christians wanted Islam there and they supposedly liberated the Christians. And why slaughter all these Christians in all these countries?
Pastor Wedgie, why don't you talk to us just so that we can bring it down? Tonight's topic is Into the Mind of a Terrorist. We want to understand how a terrorist thinks. Can you talk to us a little about the mental stability or the psychological sense of how a terrorist would think?
Well, let me just comment first about the foreign policy. It's just an excuse. Doesn't have any basis. Where is the foreign policy in Darfur? Where is the foreign policy in other parts of the world? I believe this is not really an excuse for somebody to go to blow up innocent people. So it's coming out of people are oppressed and people are fed up with the life around them. And the only escape of that is violence. As Salim mentioned that... Sami, sorry. As Sami said, this is the only language they understand. No, this is the only language that the terrorists understand and the religion understand. Because this how we have to come from the beginning. This is how the religion started. It started with violence. So violence is always the solution for every problem. So today, as a young boy in Sudan, I don't know even where is United States of America. They put in my heart to hate the Christians. Now I am in my country. I don't have any way to express myself. I'll go to an innocent people doing that. The other things is all in the name of Allah. So who is this Allah that I am fighting for him? Is he weak enough that I will go and blow young people and also lose my own life? And by the way, that the real terrorist is not the one who will go and kill himself. That we can call it, if you allow me, is a coward. But the terrorist is the one who will go and kill other people that he cannot reach the real people. So who is the real people? The White House. Say the White House. So he cannot go to the White House, so he will go to a church and blow it up, or to a number of innocent Christians and blow them up. And he said, well, because of the foreign policy. Sorry, that's not an excuse.
Okay.
And it's not acceptable.
Well, and with that, you said that they're trained at a young age to hate Christians and Jews.
Exactly.
We actually have a video clip I want to show you. It's a testimony of an Iraqi terrorist giving his account on a recent terror activity that he took part in. Let's take a look at that clip, and then we'll come back to Kamal, who can help us understand more about the mindset of a terrorist. Take a look.
دبناه وين؟ بالصندوق ورجعنا رحنا على بيت الأمير فتحنا يده وعيونه عاقبناها. شنو عاقبتوها يعني؟ سيدي بركة ولا ضرب. سيدي قالوا جيب السكين. ذبحتوا ذبح؟ اي سيدي حبيب عزت حمو راح جاب السكين سيدي. ذبحه مات. فتح الزرار مال القميص. شق بطنه سيدي. منو شق؟ هذا فتحه وطلع الراب من بطنه. طلع. هاي ما ادري شو ماله. زين ما لعبت نفسك؟ ما تقيأت؟ هو؟ انت؟ انا سيدي واقف بعيد شوي منه. وهو ما تقيأ ما لعبت نفسك؟ لا سيدي. فتحوا وطلع الاوراق وحط بيتينتي وعضوات ناسفه سيدي. ايه. خيطوا بالخياط مال حار. يعني الخيط مال قطن. ايه. ايه. والابرمين. كملوا بالازرار من خلوا الازرار مكانه. دقم الهيئه. ايه دقم الهيئه. وقالوا روحوا ودوهم بالسيارة يم الباس خاناك دورة تل أحفر دبيناه هناك خلينا راسه فوق ظهره. الله أكبر. وورا ربع ساعة نص ساعة ما أدري خبروا عليه يا جماعة ما أدري شافوهم قالوا تعالوا بنتم هنا جابوها شرطيين وياه سيدي شالوها مشوا خطوتين احنا واقفين مسافة بعيد احنا سنجار دا صدقنا بالريموت. ايه هذا تفجر عليهم ماتوا سيدي. يعني هسه النوب مات ابوه؟ ايه وماتوا اثنين شرطه. نعم سيدي. ونسم سيدي.
What I mean, this is a very disturbing, psychotic-sounding mindset. Kamal, I mean, what kind of person would be okay with something like, I mean, what you just heard? Killing somebody, pulling out their guts, filling it with explosives, taking the body and reattaching the head, putting it where the family is, and then exploding up in the family's face. What kind of a mindset do you have to be able to carry out an operation like that?
Well, let's examine the roots of all things, roots of all evil. When we look at Islam itself, I love my family and they love me, and I grew up together, and I was the favorite in the family until I converted from Islam to Christianity. Now I became an apostate. Now my family put a fatwa on my head, those family who loves me. So you go like, what possessed a family that loved their child and they want the best for him to kill him? Because if you look at Sharia law, Sharia says those who convert, Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, says those who convert from Islam, kill him. Kill him. So basically, it is a commandment. It is a commandment. So when my first mission when I was 7 years old, going to the Golan Height to fight against the Israelis, dressed as a Bedouin child, taking explosive with me to meet with the shepherds, and all my young men and that went with me, they were butchered that day, and all of us died. And now we became shuhada, we became martyrs, and we became the best of the best of the best. The pictures were hung all over the streets. The scream of cry of celebration and weddings were taking place in the streets. This is not just in Lebanon. This is in Syria. This is in Egypt. This is in Gaza Strip. This is all over. When you listen to Brother Sami and he said this is oppression of the West toward this, let's examine that statement. When we look at what's happening in Egypt, there's no Western civilization over there, but yet Christianity being oppressed. So just 3 weeks ago, they burned church. Why they burned the church? Because they were trying to just, it has a big crack and it was raining, and they tried to bridge that and fix it. But according to Islam, under the Hami status, according to Sharia law, you could not fix a church when it's broken. You have no power, nor synagogue. So therefore, it was the Islamist right to burn the church and the people that there are in it. When wedding was taking place and celebrating, and they shot them and they killed 9 men in Egypt about 3 months ago. You go like, how's that possible?